This is J. Stephen Roberts of Real Crusades History. The Battle of Jaffa is a noteworthy event because it is the moment where Richard the Lionheart truly wins the Third Crusade. In this video, I'll explain why. After Richard had defeated Saladin at Acre and Arsuf and consolidated his hold over the coastal plain, Richard made some raids toward Jerusalem, but stopped short of actually besieging the Holy City. Saladin recognized this as the moment when he might finally turn the tide, and so made a bold move. On July 27, 1192, while Richard was at Acre, Saladin moved a sizable force on Jaffa, which Richard had reconquered from Saladin the previous year. Saladin's army overwhelmed the Christian garrison. 3 days later, the Muslim troops stormed the city walls, while the garrison retired to the citadel and sent to Saladin for terms. Saladin promised the Christians they could leave with their lives and property, and that the city would not be pillaged, but he couldn't control his troops. His Kurds and Turks sacked Jaffa. Furious, Saladin posted his Mamelukes by the city gates to take the booty off the Muslim troops as they came out. At Acre, Richard heard of Saladin's attack. Though he only had a small force of knights with him, he sailed for Jaffa. Seeing Saladin's banners flying over the walls, Richard grabbed a Danish axe and, according to Ernol, the squire of Balian of Ibelin, swore that by God's calves they will not capture the Christians. Jumping off the boat into the shallows, Richard waded through the waves in his armor. 44 knights, a few hundred infantry, and a force of Italian crossbowmen followed him. In a lightning assault, Richard penetrated Jaffa and cut through Saladin's men. Richard personally battled through Jaffa's narrow streets, shoulder to shoulder with his knights. As quickly as Jaffa had fallen, she came back under Richard's control, and he'd accomplished this with a tiny fraction of the men that Saladin had used to take her. Horrified at the swiftness of Richard's victory, Saladin nevertheless believed it would be easy to crush so small a force. On August 5th, Saladin waited until dark and launched his cavalry, numbering in the thousands. Characteristically, Richard was ready. He'd drawn up his men in a shield wall formation outside the city. When Saladin's troops saw the Christians standing ready to meet them, they lost heart and simply refused to attack. A few of Saladin's most dedicated Mamluks did charge the enemy, but suffered heavy losses. Richard himself fought at the front line. Saladin's servant and biographer, Baha ad-Din, records his disappointment at the performance of the Muslim troops. The enemy stood firm and did not move from their positions. Like dogs of war, they snarled, willing to fight to the death. Our troops were frightened of them, dumbfounded by their steadfastness. The number of their cavalry was estimated at the most as 17, and at least as 9, and their foot were less than 1,000. Some said 300, others more than that. The Sultan was greatly annoyed at this and personally went around the divisions, urging his men to attack and promising them good reward if they would. Nobody responded to his appeal. I have heard that Al-Jana, Al-Mashtub's brother, said to the Sultan, "Your Mamluks who beat people off the day Jaffa fell and took their booty from them, tell them to charge." The Sultan saw that to stand face to face with this insignificant detachment without taking any action was a sheer loss of face. It was reported to me that the King of England took his lance that day and galloped from the far right wing to the far left, and nobody challenged him. The Sultan was enraged and turned his back on the fighting. As Baha ad-Din noted, Richard publicly exposed the refusal of Saladin's troops to fight by riding alone up and down their lines while they all stood watching. Saladin was furious over Richard's victory. Ernol tells us that so great was Saladin's anger that he tortured to death 2 Christian prisoners in his possession, the Knight Aubrey of Reims and the Bishop of Bethlehem. In attacking Jaffa suddenly, while Richard was north at Acre, Saladin was attempting to reverse all that Richard had achieved, for it was Saladin's goal to eliminate the Crusader presence in the Levant. Had Saladin been able to successfully take Jaffa, Acre would have been threatened, and Saladin would not have had to treat with the Crusaders. Saladin must be admired for the boldness of this move. Had it worked, it would have restored his prestige, which had been badly damaged by Richard's victories, and would have made the Crusader presence on the coast untenable. Saladin made this move at the right time, when Richard had refused to commit to an attack on Jerusalem. The first moment of relief Saladin had received in Richard's relentless advance, and yet the Lionheart's countermove was perhaps beyond anything Saladin could have expected even from Richard. Richard had a way of inspiring his troops through his personal courage, and it's easy to see how Richard's men pushed themselves to the limit as they fought beside him. A lesser man with a small band of troops would have stood no chance of hurling back the army of the greatest general in Islam that day. By defeating Saladin at Jaffa, Richard secured the coastal Crusader kingdom. If we evaluate the outcome of the Third Crusade, we see Richard achieving more of his goals than Saladin. Richard's goals were 1. To halt Saladin's war effort, and 2. To restore the kingdom of Jerusalem as it had existed prior to 1187. Richard restored the majority of the kingdom, and even added to it by wresting Cyprus from one of Saladin's Greek allies. Only Jerusalem and the important fortress Kerak on the eastern side of the Jordan remained out of Richard's reach, and Saladin must be admired for his ability to hold on to these despite being repeatedly defeated by Richard. Ascalon was lost to both sides for the time being, demolished as a result of the treaty, though it would be quickly reoccupied by the Crusaders after Saladin's death. In terms of his goals, Saladin was almost entirely thwarted. His great project to remove the Crusaders from the Levant failed utterly. One consequence of Richard's victory was the economic devastation of Egypt. Saladin's plan of economic partnership between Acre and Alexandria was shattered, and instead the Christians maintained a prominent trading power in their Levantine ports. Historian Andrew Ehrenkreutz summarizes the results of the Third Crusade. In spite of overwhelming odds in their favor, the Muslims could neither outfight the Christian contingent, nor simultaneously protect Ascalon and Jerusalem. Considering the military organization and defense-oriented economy of the Muslim countries, and in view of the strategic advantages they secured in 1187 through 89, the terms of the 1192 armistice must be regarded as a humiliating concession the Christian invaders imposed on Islam.